That put our 10-day RV trip just over, drumroll, Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to cover and review our RV trip. Let's get right into it. The three things we're going to cover today are first an overview of our trip. Second, let's break down all the actual costs of the trip, from the RV costs, gas, food, everything. And third, I'm going to go over a couple tips we learned along the way. First, I want to invite you, if you haven't watched any of our RV trip, please do so. I'll leave a link to the playlist up above and in the description. Put a lot of time and effort into it, and we had a lot of fun on our RV trip. We got the inspiration and skeleton of our trip from a travel blogger named Dangerous Business. I will leave a link to that actual blog post in the description below. We picked up our RV just outside of Minneapolis in Hastings, Minnesota. We headed south through Sioux Falls, all the way across South Dakota to Rapid City, and then once we got into Wyoming, we went up to Devil's Tower, over down to Casper, Wyoming, up to Grand Teton, up to Yellowstone, and then we headed back through Montana. We stopped in Miles City, and then made our way through North Dakota, where we stayed in Bismarck, through Fargo, and then back to Hastings. And the 10-day trip was about 2,800 miles that we took just in the RV alone. So let's break down the costs. First, let's look at the actual RV cost. We had a standard RV from Cruise America, and again, we did a full review of the RV. I'll leave a link in the description to that video, and it'll be at the top of the screen right now. We paid $140 per day for that, making that cost $1,400 for the 10-day trip. We got an online special for our mileage, and our mileage rate was 26 cents per mile, and that total came out to $739. The RV did not get the best gas mileage. I think it was about 5 or 6 miles per gallon. Our gas total was $818. The propane tank, the fridge, and the heat were all run off of the propane tank unless you were plugged in to shore power or you had the generator running. Then the fridge ran off of that shore power. And due to the time of year that we went, we didn't have to use the propane tank too much. So we only filled it up once, and it was $15 to fill up the propane tank. More information on that in a little bit. Campground cost. We stayed at campgrounds in Deadwood, Grand Teton, West Yellowstone, Livingston, and Bismarck. More information on campgrounds later and how you can make that just a little bit cheaper. Harvest Host membership. This was $99 for an annual membership fee. What is Harvest Host, you ask? Harvest Host is a membership program that invites self-contained RVers to have unique overnight experiences. Some of the places you can stay at are breweries, wineries, and some awesome places of interest. We had some of the best nights of the trip probably at our Harvest Host. One in particular where we stayed on the actual Oregon Trail. That was an awesome experience. We also stayed at 2 wineries and a brewery. And you got to meet the hosts, you got to meet sometimes the owners of the places, and it just made for just a different experience than staying at a campground. There'll also be a link in the description if you want 15% off your Harvest Host fee. There is no cost when you get to the actual place. They just ask that you patronize and spend some money, since they are letting you stay there for free. Groceries. Now, groceries we picked up in Hastings. We did online pickup, but we also did bring 2 items of food with us. We brought pulled pork and we brought some chili that we had for lunches. But our grocery total for the week was $140. We did also bring some of those staples like your olive oil, like your vegetable oil, cooking spray, kind of those necessities, I guess you would say. That is not included in this $140. Park passes. We did purchase the National Park Annual Pass, and that was $80. That pass got us access to Badlands National Park, Devil's Tower National Monument, Grand Teton National Park, Yellowstone National Park, and Theodore Roosevelt National Park. We had to pay separately at Mount Rushmore, Crazy Horse, Custer State Park, and the Mammoth Dig Site. So in total, for all of our park passes or kind of points of interest, we paid $164. If you've been doing the math at home, that put our 10-day RV trip just over, drumroll, $3,600 for basically everything. Now I just have a few tips. My first tip would be to boondock as much as you can. When we first booked the trip, we thought we needed campsites every couple nights to dump our black and gray water tanks and refill our clean water. We were wrong. There are places out west that you do all this for free essentially, or at a very cheap price. There's rest areas in some states, there are gas stations, there are public works in cities or villages that'll let you do this for free. And it's a way you can save some money. There are places that you can look for these sites through the Dirt app and freecampsites.net are just a few of them. Also, the Bureau of Land Management website has places that you can stay for a lot cheaper. Don't get me wrong, staying at some of the campsites, especially Grand Teton and some of the KOAs, were well worth it, and they were nice just to be at a campsite, but there are times that you get the same thing for a reduced cost. I have 2 tips for mileage. One is, after you figure out your RV trip, pick a place where you want to pick up the RV because you pay for every mile that you have it. Due to over 2,800 miles of our RV trip, we had a high mileage cost. We got lucky that our mileage rate was only 26 cents a mile due to an online special, but sometimes, probably in the height of summer, you would have a more standard rate, which I believe was about either 50 or 60 cents a mile. So just something to consider. Do you want to fly out to a place, say Utah, and then just drive the RV around? Or would you like to pick up the RV where we did and make that whole drive part of your trip? The second tip I have is to overestimate your miles. When we booked our trip, we estimated about 3,000 miles, but we only used 2,800, so 200 got credited back. If you go over that mileage, you have to pay a penalty for it. So it really is no sweat off your back, except you have a little more on your credit card that you have to prepay. But you will get the money back, don't worry about that. My third tip is just to pick the time of year. We went at the end of September into October, so most days it was fairly warm but not too hot, and it was cooler at night. So we never had to use the AC, and we didn't have to use a generator at all, and we didn't have to use the propane too much at night. If you would go, say, a little bit later, you might have to use more propane, therefore you're refilling it. Luckily, we found out refilling the propane tank doesn't cost too much money, so don't let that make a hindrance. But on the flip side, if you go in the middle of summer and it's hot out and you're running that AC, that means you have to run the generator or be plugged into shore power. Thanks for checking out the review of our RV trip. Like I said again, the total for our 10-day trip was $3,600, and that was just for my wife and I. If you would go with, say, a family of 3 or 4, your cost would probably be about the same in total, but you're splitting it between more people, so in theory it costs a little bit less. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and be sure if you have any comments, leave them below in the comments, and always, hit that subscribe button, turn those bell notifications on, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.